Thank you for downloading from Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. Support for this podcast comes from your generous gifts and donations. You can find out more about Ravi Zacharias and the team at www.rzim.org.
How did sexuality become a thing to be enjoyed rather than a relationship to be committed to? It's a commitment before it is just a delight. The delight comes as the reward of that commitment and an expression of that commitment, not an end in itself, but the meeting and the coming together of two souls and the raising of a family.
Hello, and welcome to a new week here on Just Thinking. The all-encompassing issue of our time that Ravi refers to in the open is homosexuality, and more precisely, same-sex marriage. Christians often find themselves in culture's crosshairs if they don't accept the inclusion. So how should Christians respond? And is there a rational reason for supporting traditional marriage, or is it just religious tradition? This week, Ravi shares from a blog he wrote on that topic as he examines God's plan for marriage. Here's Ravi.
I wrote that blog a few days ago, and the amazing thing to me is that it has already been read over 1 million times around the globe, and we are getting huge response to it. I'll be honest with you, I do not read my press, either good or bad, because I don't think it takes me anywhere that I really want to go or don't want to go. But from what I'm hearing, we're getting extremely positive response from all over the globe. Over 90 to 98% of them are in the affirmative. And where there is a counter perspective, I appreciate it, I respect it, and I know why they would say that. So my concern now is that I be exact in what I want to say. Let me set the backdrop for how we came to where we are today and how this situation has ended up in culture. I'm going to keep my delivery deliberately a little bit slow so that I can measure my words and do justice to this. One of my favorite writers is Malcolm Muggeridge. I met him, it was one of the highlights of my life, 7 months before he died in England. And Muggeridge's own conversion as a latecomer to Jesus Christ is one of the most phenomenal stories of recent memory. I think he was the greatest British journalist of the 20th century. It's a toss-up between him and G.K. Chesterton. Our own Fred Barnes in the United States was a conservative commentator. I was with Fred Barnes some years ago, and I asked him how he came to know Christ, and he said, through 2 English journalists who came and visited and were staying in their home, and after they left, his wife said to him, there's something different about those 2 guys. I want you to find out what makes them tick. So Fred Barnes said, I wrote to them and said, my wife wants to know what makes you men tick. And they sent him a copy of Malcolm Muggeridge's book, Jesus Rediscovered. And through that, Fred Barnes himself came to know Jesus Christ. Muggeridge has a brilliant way of a turn of a phrase. He was at one time chaplain of Edinburgh University before he went on to become editor of Punch magazine. And of course, he was a commentator for many years, a journalist placed in the Soviet Union, and was the first one to call out Stalin for who he really was. But here's Muggeridge's comment when he resigned from Edinburgh University. And at that time, it had to do, if I'm not mistaken, please allow me the bluntness of the language, it had something to do with the university providing condoms for the students free of charge and so on and so forth. So we're going back into the 70s. He resigned at St. Giles. This was the closing paragraph of his resignation talk to the students. So, dear Edinburgh students, this is likely to be the last time I address you. And this is what I want to say to you. And I don't really care whether it means anything to you or not, whether you think there is anything in this or not. I want you to believe that this row I have had with your elected officers has nothing to do with any puritanical attitudes on my part. I have no belief in abstinence for abstinence's own sake. I have no wish under any circumstances to check any fulfillment of your life and your being. But I have to say to you this, that whatever life is or is not about, it is not to be expressed in terms of drug drug stupefaction, and casual sexual relations. However else we may venture into the unknown, it is not, I assure you, on the plastic wings of Playboy magazine or psychedelic fancies. With that, he bid the students farewell. However we venture forth into the future, it is not going to be on the wings of Playboy magazine or psychedelic fancies. Now, this comes from a man who was one time an indulgent person himself, who experienced all that there was and said he came away empty-handed. In the book of Mark, we have these verses. It's from Mark chapter 10. You can look at the whole context later. But Jesus is talking about the hardness of the people's hearts and how the very law was made to somehow soften the full blow of it. But then he went on to say, at the beginning of creation, in verse 6, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh, so that they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. I believe this is not only on the consummate relationship of exclusive bondage and the binding of truth in the man and woman's marital life. It is also the pattern of how he created man and woman at the beginning. This is the pattern, that's the preamble to the injunction. Why a husband and wife ultimately even develop a closer bond than that of parent and child, even though the parent and child have a blood relationship to each other. This marital commitment is so sacred and was envisioned right from the beginning as he created us in our distinctiveness and in our diversity, so that when we find that unity and that consummate relationship, it would be such a permanent bond and an all-transcending bond. I think the pattern is given there, not just the exclusivity and the transcending of any other earthly relationships. But somewhere in the 60s, patterns started to change, and sex became a thing with which we could be entertained unabashedly. That there was no apology made anymore for the brazenness with which nakedness or nudity could be used to exploit, especially the young, and draw them into hungers and plant into their minds desires and affections that would walk with them the rest of their lives to the dangerous point where no one human being could then meet their desires, because they were not in the pursuit of a person, they became in the pursuit of a feeling. If you really are looking for a feeling that will transcend the previous experience all the time, you have actually eclipsed the value of a person, and a person becomes a means to your ends. My daughter Naomi works with those who are in the sex trafficking industry. Some of you know she's a wee little girl, and she goes into the brothels of India and South Africa and Thailand and Amsterdam with a Bible in her purse, and she'll walk into some of these red light districts with others who are working there and sit down with some of those who are marketing themselves, and they'll turn that light off while she gets into that little booth with them to talk with them and share the gospel with them and pray with them. And she would tell me time and again, she said, Dad, almost every story I track of how these women got into it was either through deceit or manipulations or lies of some man somewhere. And those men got into it invariably through pornography. And so if we really want to look at where this sexual revolution began and the damage that was done in the desacralization of the body and the marketing of feelings, go and try and understand what really goes on in the pornography industry. See how many young men and then women and now children are having those images planted into their minds. Once upon a time, you would have to go into a store and see just the top title of the magazine because the main picture would be blocked off in a convenience store or whatever. Now you just have to go into your basement and turn on the internet or get out your cell phone in private and have all kinds of fanciful things planted. Why would I want my marriage destroyed by that kind of stuff? Why would I want to give my mind that kind of rubbish that is taking away from me the most important commitment I've made in my life? But these are the marketers and peddlers of stuff. How did this all come about? How did sexuality become a thing to be enjoyed rather than a relationship to be committed to? It's a commitment before it is just a delight. The delight comes as the reward of that commitment and an expression of that commitment, not an end in itself, but the meeting and the coming together of two souls and the raising of a family. And I will say this to the West: if we do not return to the values of what the family is meant to be and what the home is meant to be, we will be plundered by ideologies far more ravaging than the one we are seeing right now, because the greatest strength of any society is in its home. And in how we educate the young and how we teach them that there is honor that has to go hand in hand with the bodily pleasures. If your heart is an altar and his love is the flame, then the heart is contained in the very temple. This is now the Holy of Holies for you and me, where we really meet the living God.
Sober words as the West struggles with the issue of sexuality, and more importantly, its impact on our relationship with God. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as Ravi continues this message titled, God's Plan for Marriage. If you would like to purchase a copy of this message, be sure to call us at 1-800-448-6766. If you prefer to order online, you can visit our website at rzim.org or rzim.ca for those in Canada.
Hi there, this is Cameron McAllister. I'm a speaker and a writer here at Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, and I'd like to tell you about a podcast I host. It's called Vital Signs, and the tagline is Signs of Life in Today's Culture. And I try to show how Christianity and Scripture addresses all of life comprehensively. My hope is that you walk away not only challenged and not only informed, but with a renewed vigor and a real sense of hope. And if you're a non-Christian or if you're a skeptic or somebody who's on the fence, I hope that you find not only that your views are fairly and accurately represented, but that you have real food for thought.
RZIM has a global team of speakers with offices in 13 different countries. We want to empower you to engage in earnest conversations with those who have honest questions about the Christian faith and help you become better equipped to share the gospel. To find out more information about our ministry or to donate to our efforts, be sure to call us or visit our website. Just Thinking is a listener-supported radio ministry and is furnished by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, Atlanta, Georgia.